I think if you're looking for cards that should be more popular this weekend, you're looking at slow sources of card advantage that got crowded out of the format a little bit when Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time were legal. Stoneforge Mystic, to me, is the top of that list. If you want to go a little bit further down, I think cards like Ancestral Visions, Life from the Loam, Sylvan Library, the more ponderous sources of card advantage in the format, they should be a lot more popular this weekend than they have been in the previous year.
It's a Thoughtseize here for Tyler Scott from his Abzan deck. We'll take a look at Joe's hand. You'll find a Jace the Mind Sculptor, a Trinket Mage, a Flooded Strand and Island, a Ponder. There's also a Mountain and an Engineered Explosives.
What I really appreciate about Bernal's takes on Stoneblade, they're different every single time, and he's definitely gunning for particular decks. Most builds of Stoneblade we'd see are just sort of a smattering of good control cards with Stoneforge, Mystic, Batterskull, Numazawa's Jitte. Joe here, with 2 copies of Trinket Mage in the main deck, the only targets here, 1 copy of Sensei's Divine Top and 3 copies of Engineered Explosives, but he's definitely trying to metagame for particular decks. We've seen him before have a lot of success with main deck Back to Basics, for example.
For Scott and his Abzan deck, it's kind of a mix between a black-green strategy and a Maverick deck. You know, he's got a couple copies of Night of the Reliquary, a couple copies of Green Sun Zenith, but you're also going to find copies of Glittering Wish here, Siege Rhino. Deathrite Shaman's, of course, going to hold everything together along with Abrupt Decay, so there's a lot going on here for him. Bernal with just a Flooded Strand before passing the turn back.
You can look at it as a souped-up version of modern Abzan decks. You do get Deathrite Shaman, which is a nice boost in power. The lands are a lot more powerful, and you get better angles with Night of the Reliquary, things like Wasteland or Thespian Sage plus Dark Depths.
An island here for Bernal. You saw Thoughtseize take the Ponder to start off round number 1 here from St. Louis. Bernal with a Brainstorm in hand. Been a little while since we've seen one of those be cast.
Now, just because there have been a big banning here in Dig Through Time, this is still going to be a blue-dominated format.
Of course. That's not going to change.
It's just, can you, basically the threshold to me is, can you main deck Pyroblast? Not, are people playing blue decks or not, but can you main deck the red blasts?
I think at this stage in the format, no, because Dig Through Time is gone, but, you know, we'll find out as we make it through a couple of rounds here.
And Joe's got one in his main deck.
Fair enough. He feels like he can. You saw Brainstorm pick up a Ponder, a Batterskull there, among others, so Joe will have to put 2 back. He's also got the Fetch Land out there to make it a pretty healthy Brainstorm.
And for decks like Abzan, it's not a question of do you have powerful cards or not. Scott's list is nothing but tournament-level home runs. It's just without having the blue cards in your deck, like Brainstorm and Ponder, are you just too susceptible to long-term variance? Do you play too many games where you flood out or stall on lands? It doesn't happen that frequently to the blue decks in the format because you have Ponder and Brainstorm to fix your draws.
Here's another Thoughtseize from Scott. Joe will show off his hand. He's got a Force of Will, Trinket Mage, Ponder, Engineered Explosives, Jace, another Fetch Land there, and Flooded Strand. So some very powerful cards there for Tyler Scott to choose from.
You see Joe making no effort to force a will this because there's nothing in his hand particularly worth protecting. He could try to get to Jace the Mind Sculptor, but that's a pretty big risk to try to force a will, pitch a different blue card, and resolve that over the course of several turns. Bernal knows this is going to be an attrition game, and no rush to use a force of will here.
Jace will bite the dust to the Thoughtseize. Dark Depths is the land here for Scott. Again, he's got one of those, and he's got 1 copy of Thespian Stage. Now the Reliquary kind of brings that all together. Looks like Deathrite Shaman will come across for a point of damage there. We're going to head back Joe's way in just a moment.
Glittering Wish, also an interesting tool in Scott's toolbox here. There's no real combo for him to assemble, but there's a variety of good stuff. Things like Anaphens of the Foremost for the appropriate matchups, Pernicious Deed and Maelstrom Pulse to get rid of some problematic permanents.
Can't forget this old Armadillo Cloak that's hanging out here.
Oh, the one Armadillo Cloak is beautiful. I suspect it's not for this matchup, but I do love that it's here.
Bernal will take a draw after fetching. Picked up a copy of Batterskull. Tried to shuffle that one away, but it wants to stay in Joe's hand. There's land number 3. Bernal will sacrifice that Flooded Strand. We'll see what land he wants to get. One thing about Joe when he's always playing these Stoneblade decks, typically he's playing blue-white with maybe a small splash of black for like Lingering Souls flashback, but he's always got a lot of basics.
Yeah, this list is a blue-white deck splashing just a little bit of red for a main deck red elemental blast, sideboard cards, and extra flexibility on Engineered Explosives.
Explosive's going to take care of Deathrite Shaman. We'll head back Tyler Scott's way. Picked up a copy of Bajuka Bog.
And I really like Bernal getting rid of the Deathrite Shaman there with Scott not exactly missing land drops, but didn't do anything last turn with his Deathrite Shaman except attack. Played a Dark Depth as his land drop. Scott's likely to be a little tight on mana right now, so I like going after the mana creature.
Here's a Scavenging Ooze. And we are going to head back Bernal's way here in just a moment. So 2 islands and a plains here for Joe. Quite a few good cards in hand. Jace is the draw step. Always a doozy. Sometimes you'll find in decks that do have copies of Trinket Mage, maybe a Seat of the Synod or an Ancient Den, something like that. I don't think that Joe's playing any of that stuff this weekend.
No artifact land. There is a small argument to have one, because Trinket Mage can get your 4th land for Jace the Mind Sculptor, and that comes up in certain spots. But Bernal really values having a lot of basics in the list, you can tell, and that makes a lot of sense in a format with Wasteland. He's also got Blood Moon in his sideboard. So drawing a random artifact land is not a cost that Bernal is willing to pay.
Snapcaster Mage, Force of Will, Volcanic Island, the cards Joe's looking at here from the Ponder. So he'll have to decide if he wants to keep it or not. Looks like he's considering keeping it with how he's rearranging the cards. And he will. So Volcanic Island added. That'll be the land for the turn. And now we might get a Trinket Mage. And we do. So that'll trigger, and it'll be time for Joe to search. Looks like he's going to go that Explosives route again. As you mentioned, a lot of copies of that card in his main deck this weekend.
So Bernal had an interesting line here. He can either go get Sensei's Divining Top, which he has 1 copy of, which just sets him up in a general sense for a good long game against a deck like Abzan, or he could go and get his copy of Engineered Explosives to protect himself against a problematic permanent that Scott could resolve, to further protect the Jace the Mind Sculptor in his hand. It looks like Bernal really values getting that Jace on the table and having some protection, and is just going to go for the Engineered Explosives.
Siege round on the draw step here for Tyler Scott. He's going to come across here with Scavenging Ooze. He does have a creature in the graveyard there in Deathrite Shaman, so blocking probably not ideal here for Joe, so he'll let the Ooze come through. The follow-up appears to be Knight of the Reliquary here for Tyler. It's a small one at this point, no lands in the graveyard for him. But it can grow very quickly, and it can find Thespian Stage, and you have to imagine that's on Bernal's radar now. Force of Will to draw here for Joe.
And Bernal elected not to Force of Will because he's just going to play Jason unsummon here.
Yep. Jace the Mind Sculptor has arrived. I know it's been a lot of Jace, Vryn's Prodigy, and Jace the Telepath Unbound, but this is the best Jace.
Yep.
This is
still the best.
Still the best Jace. Bayou the draw here for Tyler.
This would be a great spot for Abrupt Decay.
Yes.
Would allow Scott to get the Trinket Mage off the table, attack and kill Jace. Jace, the Mind Sculptor, is one of the most problematic cards for mid-range good stuff decks, especially ones with a lot of creatures, because having your 3 and 4 mana plays get unsummoned is brutal.
Joe can't block fast enough, putting Trinket Mage in front of that Scavenging Ooze. Ooze will activate, remove the Deathrite Shaman. Scott will gain a life, put a counter on it, take care of the Trinket Mage. And the follow-up will likely be Knight of the Reliquary again. But this is where Jace really starts to get to work. And you can see Bernal with that Force Will in his hand. He is ready to counter this thing.
And the leftovers here, Engineer Explosives and Batterskull, meaning land number 5 is excellent for Joe regardless. He can either play Batterskull or he can play Explosives, get rid of the Scavenging Ooze, and really start going to work with Jace.
So Force of Will take care of the Knight of the Reliquary. Scott will have to press the turn back over to Bernal. Bernal will take a draw step, picked up a copy of Source of Plowshares. That might make things even easier.
Exactly. Now he doesn't even have to go out of his way to do anything with the Engineer Explosive this turn. He can answer the Scavenging Ooze on the table. Really start taking this game over.
Time for Joe to brainstorm. Flusterstorm, Stoneforge Mystic among the cards that he's drawn. He's got to put 2 back here, of course. But he is in a really good spot now. Scalding Tarn was the other card drawn. We might see a turn here of put these cards back, fetch, sword your creature, play Stoneforge, get the Batterskull that I shuffle away. There's a lot he can do this turn.
Yeah, it's a little awkward here because Bernal right now only has the basic planes in play as a source of white mana, and I think he wants to cast both Stoneforge Mystic and Swords of Plowshares this turn, so he has to keep the Scalding Tarn to go get a Tundra to unlock both of his white cards this turn.
Tundra is the weapon of choice there for Bernal. Joe says, I'm going to play a Stoneforge Mystic, so don't bother shuffling. And now he's going to search up likely a Batterskull, could be a Jite. Looks like he's going to go the Jite route. So Stoneforge online now. Source of Plowshares likely going to be next here for Joe. And he's really in the driver's seat now.
Yep, and I like getting the Umezawa's Jitte here in lieu of the Batter Skull.
Okay.
Because with Jace the Mind Sculptor in play, it's not like Bernal cares that much about a random big creature slipping through the cracks, because he can simply unsummon it and go about his business in the next turn. What he is worried about is a card like Lingering Souls, because he can't answer that very easily by blocking. Batter Skull doesn't do anything to protect it, and individual spot removal doesn't do a lot of work as well. So this protects him against something like Lingering Souls threatening Jace.
I like Joe's play here this turn as well, as of kind of waiting to cast the Swords of Plowshares. He could have just cast it on his own turn, but he's casting it on his opponent's turn. Part of the reason for that is because he's got a Flusher Storm in his hand, so he wants to build the Storm count a little bit in case that does come up.
Exactly. And if, Scott wants to spend some mana this turn gaining life, Bernal doesn't care about that.
So it's a minor thing, but it's something that could certainly come up here.
Yep.
There's a Bayou. Could be time for a Siege Rhino. And it is. And Siege Rhino is definitely one heck of a Magic card, but doesn't stand up to Jace the Mind Sculptor and Umezawa's Jitte.
Yep, this is not standard.
No. No, it's not.
I mean, it's not bad here. If you're going to make Bernal unsummon a large threat, might as well be something with enters the battlefield trigger, but it is not nearly the threat that it is in standard or even modern.
It's time to brainstorm. Joe will draw 3. Brainstorm, Counterspell, Trinket Mage.
And this is a small victory here for Scott. Bernal knows that he can't really, unsummon this Rhino, untap, try again, So he's got a Brainstorm here and might end up losing the Jace inside of combat.
Jace has gotten a lot of work done this game. Been out there for a couple turns now.
Though it's impressive here that Scott's still hanging in this game. Usually Jace unchecked for several turns against a mid-range deck without the same level of card advantage is a death sentence. But, Bernal certainly is ahead at this point, but has not locked up the game at this point.
Arid Mesa going to search for Plains. Bernal going to fall down to 9. We'll see what's next here for Joe. Got all that mana to work with. I think he might go a Brainstorm route. See, one thing he's always cognizant of is which mana to tap he's going with the Tundra to Brainstorm as opposed to just a basic island because of a card like Wasteland. 2 Stoneforge Mystics and a Scalding Tarn. Those are the cards that Brainstorm picked up. Not all that helpful at this point. So 2 cards going back here for Joe. I think we might see Stoneforge get cast now. That'll search up Batter Skull. Or Jitte, since he did put that equipment away, but he's going to go with Batter Skull this time.
I like getting the Batter Skull here because he can just block the Rhino next turn. He's going to force Scott to have a removal spell, and Scott has not shown removal on several turns where it would have been good for him to kill Stoneforge Mystic, to kill Trinket Mage. So this is a reasonable workaround here for Bernal, is just hope that the Rhino can't attack through a blocking Stoneforge Mystic and Batter Skull.
Back to Tyler Scott will go. He'll draw. Glittering Wish. Well.
Let's go to the tape,
yes,
shall we? What we got to dial up here?
Take a little lootsky poo.
We got Armadillo Cloak, Anafenza of the Foremost, Galacti, Golgari Charm, Maelstrom Pulse. Maelstrom Pulse is not shabby here.
I don't hate Maelstrom Pulse. It's got to resolve first.
Kasali Primage, Pernicious Deed.
Sigarda, Host of Herons.
Yep.
So this is a fun one to see cast because if I'm Joe, I'm probably thinking, I don't really know what that can get, so I kind of just want to counter it. He's in a tough spot because he wants to counter it, but he also wants to let it resolve and then counter what comes after it, I think. But you don't know if what he can search for is like uncounterable or something. Like you have to really rack your brain about what this card could go find, and it just seems safer to just counter this straight away.
Yep.
That's exactly what he's going to do with that counter spell.
Also, now he doesn't have the mana to flash in the Batter Skull, so if he wants to protect Jace, he has to just chump block with both copies of Stoneforge Mystic.
That's exactly what he does. No trample damage done. Jace is still out there. Bernal will draw. Picked up a copy of Arid Mesa. Unsummon the Siege Rhino. And now we'll see if it's Batterskull time or not. The one thing to note here, this entire game, is that Tyler still has that Dark Depths over there. Now, he's only got one Thespian stage in his deck. If he draws it at some point, it's going to be pretty good.
Yeah, you know, Joe gets some looks potentially at an answer, but I don't even know if he's got a lot of answers in his deck.
Yeah. Trinket Mage. Might be time to go get that top. Yep. Start to really work towards the long game now. If Jace wasn't enough, top will certainly help.
And this is the difference to me with the blue decks and non-blue decks of the format. It's not like Scott's deck is weak. It's got plenty of powerful cards. Some of the cards are very good in this kind of matchup. It's just when Bernal untaps, he gets 6 or 7 looks at a card he's searching for. And when Scott untaps, he draws the top card of his deck. So when you get to spots like this, Bernal has a huge edge. It's not like Scott is drawing dead. Bernal can miss on some of these looks, and as you mentioned, if he's able to find Thespian Sage, he may be able to sneak through for a win. But unless he draws very particular cards, Bernal just has an enormous edge when the game looks like this.
Yeah, Joe just gets to see so many cards per turn, whereas Scott does not. And that's really the big difference. There's no guarantee that Joe's going to hit what he's looking for, but when you get to look at 6, sometimes 7 cards per turn, chances are you'll find what you're looking for.
Right. Scott has just drawn a forest. Bernal on his turn gets to draw one of several cards.
Yes.
And he has a lot of control over it because of shuffling effects and redraws and what have you. Oh, excuse me, a Dryad Arbor.
Tricked you. That forest tricked you.
Yep.
Here's a Thrun, the last troll. Can't counter it, can't do much to it.
That tricky Dryad Arbor.
Yeah. Joe's going to untap all that mana. Not yet. Looks like he's going to spin top. Brainstorm. Stoneforge Mystic, he's already happy. He says, give me Brainstorm.
And I love this from Bernal, too. Very mindful of pace of play. He knows that with a deck like this, he's liable to get draws in spots where he would win the game if he had more time. So he's willing to sacrifice some perfection with his play to make sure that he's just going to be able to finish the round in time.
That's something you got to do.
Yep.
Especially with a deck like this, because you don't win very fast.
It's a skill you have to develop. And if you go and read Patrick Chapin's article this week about his Pro Tour experience, he talked a lot about that as well.
Yep.
You just got to get used to playing these decks fast in a tournament setting because these draws would have often been wins if you had a little bit more time.
There's Flooded Strand. And Jace has already brainstormed this turn. Bernal will get a basic island. Down to 80 goes.
And the sequencing is tough with these decks. You have, Stoneforge Mystic, Jace the Mind Sculptor, Fetch Land, Sensei's Divining Top. These are things that put a lot of burden on your order of operations to make sure that you get the most looks at whatever card you're going for.
It's so much about maximizing to see as many cards as possible per turn.
And Joe is willing to sacrifice some of that right now to save some of the clock.
Is it Brainstorm time? Could cast Batterskull. A lot of options here. There's Batterskull. Germ Token on the way. And now Stoneforge Mystic. I think we'll have an Umazawa Shite on the way as well. So there you go. Now we're going to go back to Tyler Scott. We know he's got a Siege Rhino. But what else? Looks like another Reliquary was the draw. Thrun might come in. It's a relatively safe attack. Trinket Mage, gonna block. Looks like pretty quickly here for Joe.
Bernal has the option of blocking with the Germ and at least forcing Scott to use 2 mana to regenerate.
Doesn't look like he's got a lot of interest in that, though. Here's Knight.
Now, Knight of the Reliquary has to be answered here.
Yes.
Because of the Dark Depths in play, risking a Thespian Sage that can kill Bernal in one shot.
Joe will draw a copy of Flooded Strand. Joe knows the last card in Tyler's hand is a Siege Rhino. So he's working with what is basically perfect information. Gonna tap 4 mana pretty quickly. It might be Jib plus Equip. But let's start with a Brainstorm from Chase. Flusterstorm, Counterspell, Swords to Plowshares.
Yeah, Swords, you can see Bernal there nodding the head. Because he would have to go through some hoops to answer the Knight of the Reliquary this turn otherwise. But being able to answer it clean means his Jace is protected, frees up Batterskull to get in a big shot here. It means that Scott again has to just top deck his copy of Thespian Sage rather than just tutoring up with the Knight.
Now there's Umezawa's Jite. Batterskull's going to come in.
Although I suppose here, Scott actually has no lands in his graveyard, so the Jite is enough to get it done.
It's actually true.
Source of Plowshares is a nice insurance policy for the Siege Rhino or some follow-up threat, but...
Yeah, one thing we haven't seen Scott do all game is fetch, which is a weird thing to say.
I just assumed that the Knight would be outside of range, but nope. Graveyard is free of lands.
Let's see if Joe realizes that. Yeah, he's just going to Swords that. You hope that doesn't come back to hurt him, because if Tyler does draw Thespian Sage this turn, things get really awkward. I don't know if Joe realized that Knight was only a 2/2. No lands in the graveyard. Oh, we're going to go manual. Dark Depths down to 8. Thawing it away. Green Sun Zenith to draw.
And now this Batterskull plus Jite shuts down Thrun from attacking, since Joe can simply give +2/+2 to the Germ token. Force Scott to use mana. Bernal still gains the life.
There's Zenith. It's only going to be for 2.
I imagine that a Zenith for 2 here is an effort to get Kasali Pride Mage.
Bernal, a Flusterstorm and Counterspell, man. And this is another one of those situations, much like the Glittering Wish, where you're not entirely sure what it's going to go get, so you just say, you know what, I'm just going to counter it straight away. I don't want to have to think about this too much. I like my positioning in this game. Let's try to get this over with.
And, you had to assume Scott has some way of interacting with artifacts among his creature selection.
He's a green deck, right?
Yeah. So, better safe than sorry. I'm sure Bernal would have loved to use the Flusterstorm there, but Scott with more than enough mana.
Siege Rhino's still the last card in Tyler Scott's hand. No real good attacks to be had here. I think he's come to that realization. So Thrun's going to have to try to D up a little bit. Joe on the upkeep's going to spin the top. So it's a Brainstorm, an Engineered Explosives, and a Flooded Strand. Brainstorm the draw. Now Joe's got to try to do this kind of dance to try to get through this Thrun that's on defense.
Well, the way things are currently set up, Bernal can simply attack every turn, gain some life. Scott can't make any inroads on the board. And if Bernal wants to, he can start just Fate Sealing with Jace. He can lock out Scott's draw step. There's probably not a whole lot of impactful cards left in Scott's deck at this point, only a couple out. So Fate Sealing with Jace starts to get pretty attractive.
Well, things just got a lot easier for Joe because True Name Nemesis is on top of the deck from spinning the top. And that's kind of the easiest way through all this nonsense. You play True Name, it's got protection from Tyler Scott now. Then you can move Jite and company over there, get to work, and here's the Fate Sealing as you mentioned. And Joe happy to leave whatever that card is on top, I think.
And I love this line of play from Bernal because with what Bernal has in play, if you're in his seat, what are you thinking? Scott probably has 1 or 2 cards in his deck that can get him out of this kind of spot, or at least give him some game, and nothing else really matters. So Bernal drawing random cards off the top of his deck isn't worth very much, because most of Scott's cards, his draw steps, aren't worth very much. And if Bernal draws extra cards but doesn't draw particularly well, Scott's top decks might get him back in the game. So you start Fate Sealing here, because that's a better way of cutting out Scott's outs than Bernal just continuing to draw cards every turn.
And now he's gotten himself out of range of kind of like a Siege Rhino kind of cheesy kill too. He's at 18 now.
Yep.
He was a lot lower a couple of turns ago. He's going to fall down to 15 here, and Scott's going to go up to 26, but that doesn't matter all that much at this point.
He's gaining enough life where even if Thespian Stage was drawn, Bernal might just be able to race.
Yeah.
Once Bernal gets above 20, it becomes not that hard.
Sensei's Divine Top, the draw here for Joe. We might see him just move all the equipment over to True Name Nemesis. We've seen this before. He's still got a Jace to use as well, as that Jace has been out there for a very long time.
The concern with moving, it looks straightforward here to just move the Batterskull over, and I think that's what Bernal's going to end up doing, but it's at least worth being careful thinking about for a moment. You go down from 3 creatures to 2 because you're down the Germ token. Then suddenly some edicts come off the top. Maybe all of your creatures die. It's unlikely, but this is not a no-brainer just move the Batterskull over setup.
And that's why you see him giving it some thought. He might consider just moving GT instead. But he's going to go with Batterskull. And now GT 2. And now here come the attacks. It'll be for 7. Some counters will go on GT so long as Joe does remember the trigger. Up to 4. And now Bernal is looking to be in the driver's seat. Verdant Catacombs going to be sacrificed here.
But this is the edge of playing blue decks in matchups like this.
Yep.
I mean, Scott, this game, you know, he drew 2 copies of Thoughtseize. He found his main deck Thrun. It's good tools for the matchup, but when the game slows down and is about top decking, the blue decks are so much better than the non-blue decks.
You see the hand here, Sensei's Divine Top, Brainstorm, Flusterstorm. Those cards not all that impressive. Top's going to bite the dust from the Thoughtseize, but what Joe needs, for lack of a better term, he's already got on the battlefield.
Exactly, and his hand's just so naturally redundant.
Siege Rhino is going to come in here along with Thrun. This could be a bit of a massacre.
If I'm Bernal, I think that I'm not chump blocking with the Stoneforge Mystic. I'm okay with Jace going down to 1 loyalty because I don't want an edict off the top to suddenly matter.
Sure. You see the blocks are going to take place, and Tyler Scott's going to concede the game. So Joe Bernal is going to win game number 1 here over Tyler Scott. Blue-White Stoneblade up a game here over Abzan, which means we're going to turn our attentions to the sideboard. And as we do so, we will start with Tyler Scott. And he's got a lot of one-ups in his sideboard, 15 to be exact. So try to keep up with the Armadillo Cloak, the Inoffensive, the Foremost, the Choke, the Ethersworn Canonist, the Gaddock Teague, the Golgari Charm, the Grafdigger's Cage, the Crozen Grip, a Life in the Loam, a Maelstrom Pulse, a Qasali Pride Mage, a Pernicious Deed, a Sigarda, Host of Herons, a Thalia Guardian of Thraben, and a Toxic Deluge. Most of this stuff is for Glittering Wish. He's got 2 copies of those in his main deck, but some of these singletons will be pretty good in this matchup, I think.
I think the Choke, certainly the Crozan Grip, and the Thalia are all okay cards to bring in this matchup. As you mentioned, there's some gold cards here that he could sideboard in if he wanted to. The Maelstrom Pulse, the additional copy of Gaddock Teague, the Qasali Pride Mage, but I think that those are probably going to be left in the sideboard as wish targets.
What do we see on the other side of things?
2 copies of Is It Staticaster, a Rest in Peace, a Relic of Progenitus, 2 copies of Pithy Needle, 2 copies of Blood Moon, a Chalice of the Void, 3 Containment Priest, a Wear Tear, and 2 copies of Red Elemental Blast. Scott showed no basic lands in game one, and unless he's really mindful about fetching, Blood Moon could just be a KO out of nowhere. I think the copy of Relic of Progenitus is fine. Scott does use his graveyard for certain things like Knight of the Reliquary and Deathrite Shaman, and I think there's enough activated effects in this deck where the 2 copies of Pithy Needle are fine to bring in as well.
Well, those are the options there for both players. You see the clock there. We're going to be under 20 minutes when this game does begin. Just a classic Legacy control matchup. Really does take a little while to get done.
Yeah, there's a lot of searching and there's a lot of shuffling, and the games can get pretty complicated there. And Scott was not playing on hopelessly. It looked like the game was still reachable until those last couple turns. So sometimes it just takes a while.
Well, game number 2 will be underway between the 2 of them. In the meantime, we're talking about the popular promotion here with Star City Games. It's game night, and it is available every single month. In October, we've got the Hippo, and we only got 2 more months left of the year, but we've got some cool stuff coming in November and December.
Absolutely. Stores can set up game night however they want to, sanctioned or unsanctioned, whatever formats they want, just to get players in the store for fun and friendly magic, where we give out these kits with pins and foils every month. This is the October kit, running out of time to get it. November coming right down the pipeline. Here you see the Otter. If you want to get signed up for December, where we have the reindeer, head over to starcitygames.com/game night for more information, or contact your Star City Games in-store play representative.
We get ready here for game number 2 between Tyler Scott and Joe Bernal. Tyler Scott will be on the play. Not a lot of time left for these 2 players to try to finish 2 games, given how slow that first one went. And neither deck is particularly quick here either.
Yeah, and then the matchup here, there's a lot of complicated play on the board, a lot of searching and shuffling, and these are not going to be short affairs. Both of these decks, I would say, are better at defending themselves than attacking the other person.
Yeah, kind of incidentally winning.
Yeah. Scott's deck is a little bit more aggressive than Bernal's, but not a ton. Not by Legacy standards, at least.
464 players doing battle here in St. Louis this week, and a very important weekend for many on our leaderboard as they try to qualify for the Players' Championship, and most of those players are here. A player like Todd Anderson, for example, opting to take the weekend off because he's got quite a few Open Series points, did win Standard State Championships in North Carolina last week, so feeling as though his lead is relatively safe at this point to qualify, but we'll see.
Yes, I would not be counting any chickens right now. Just the sheer number of points that are floating around and that are left to be gotten, very, very high, especially compared to last year. It's not inconceivable to me that the points leader at the end of Season 4 will have above 300 points.
I wouldn't be surprised. Because you mentioned there are quite a few tournaments left.
Yep.
We'll go over that Season 4 schedule a couple of times today, but next weekend we'll be in Dallas. Then we'll be
Philadelphia.
in Philadelphia after that.
Grand Prix Atlanta.
Well, that'll be a weekend off for the Open Series. We'll be taking a trip to Kansas City, Denver. We've got a couple of stops left here. We are not even close to done at this point. You qualify for the Players' Championship on one of those at-large bids. You certainly earned it. Scott is going to send his hand back. Does not like what he sees. We'll see about Bernal here.
And Bernal, I think, is looking at a one-lander with Ponder and Blood Moon, his best sideboard card.
I'm keeping. I have no shame. I get Thoughtseize, good beats.
Well, Bernal also has Force of Will in hand to protect himself.
Oh, easy keep. Looks like Tyler's going to keep. Joe's kept as well. Tyler going to use that new Vancouver Mulligan rule. Going to get the Scry. Top card going to go to the bottom. We're underway here in game number 2. A Stirring Wildwood is where things will start here for Tyler Scott. Bernal, he's got that island. Is he going to cast that Ponder? Looks like he will. Another Ponder, Stoneforge Mystic, and a Containment Priest. A whammy. It's time to shuffle. So mystery card coming here for Joe. And we'll see if it is land number 2. Stoneforge Mystic. So no second land here for Joe Bernal just yet. Tyler Scott will draw the Dryad Arbor. There's a Verdant Catacombs to sacrifice that, go down to 19. go with a copy of Bayou. And now it's Glittering Wish. Looks like this will resolve this time. It's going to be Gaddock Teague. Very good against Jason the Mind Sculptor for obvious reasons.
Yep. Supreme Verdict or Wrath of God if he's worried about that.
Ponder the draw step here for Joe. Perhaps we do it again. Joe also does have a copy of Brainstorm in hand, but he could get Brainstorm locked, so I think he's going to take the safer route, go with the Ponder. A Containment Priest, a Basic Plains, and a Force of Will are the cards here for Bernal.
Ponder's also just more looks
Yeah.
at the land drop, so better to lead off with that.
Pretty hard to pass up that Plains. Joe will not. There is the Plains, and now he'll pass the turn back. There's the Dryad Arbor for Tyler, and now here's Gaddock Teague. Force of Will. Gonna be cast. We'll see what Joe wants to exile as part of the casting cost.
And you can see, I think at this point, Bernal's path is just keep the board clear and get to this Blood Moon.
Gonna go with Jace. And it does look like the big winner here is Blood Moon if it does resolve. Joe's got some options here. Brainstorm among them. He knows the top card of his deck, doesn't know the two after it. It's like he's just going to pass.
He can leave up Containment Priest this turn and Brainstorm end of turn if Scott doesn't cooperate and hunt for that third land. It needs to be a particular land, too. It needs to be a fetch land.
Oh, Dryad Arbor. That poor Dryad Arbor.
Oh, no.
Containment Priest looking to eat. Wow. What's the follow-up here? That's a bit of a beating. A choke? Okay.
a whiteboarded choke.
Your favorite way
Yes.
to humiliate someone. It's going to resolve. Force of Will to draw.
This
Timely.
is great. This is great.
Here comes Containment Priest. That was quite the exchange there.
Yeah, great turn for both players.
Deathrite Shaman the draw.
Really hoping to get a choke versus Blood Moon's battle here.
Just how the game was meant to be played.
Yeah, just how Richard Garfield drew it up.
There's Bajuka Bog. Another non-basic land for Joe's Blood Moon if it ever does come. I'm just going to pass the turn back. Joe can't untap that island thanks to choke. Drew another Brainstorm. The draw steps are going to be a hoot here. Abrupt Decay going to take care of Containment Priest. Back over to Tyler. Another Abrupt Decay of the draw. He also has Liliana in hand. Going to start with Deathrite. Just pass the turn back. Arid Mesa is the land for the turn. Bernal going to sacrifice that, fall down to 18. Go with a mountain. And I think a Stone Forge. Yep. We'll see what equipment he wants to go for. Gonna go with Batterskull.
And we might see exactly the line of play or the board setup you suggested before. Because I think Scott, with the game kind of at neutral here, not a lot going on, just activating Stirring Wildwood and going to work seems pretty attractive. That will tap him out.
Yep.
Might have copied the Stirring Wildwood there.
Looks like he's going to copy the Bayou
Okay.
with the Thespian stage. Okay. There's Kosali Pride Mage. It's a clean answer to a lot of Joe's stuff. I think, yeah, Joe's going to have to counter this.
Yeah, his plan is right now Blood Moon.
Yeah.
So he cannot let this Pride Mage enter play.
So Force of Will, removing Brainstorm is going to go after that. Pride Mage down. Abrupt Decay still available, though. Again, remember that Thespian Stage is a Bayou, so Abrupt Decay is going to take care of Stoneforge Mystic. Here comes Deathrite Shaman.
Big draw step here for Bernal.
It's an Arid Mesa. Could be Blood Moon time.
And Scott's already played a couple copies of Abrupt Decay here.
Mm-hmm.
Bernal even has a second Plains in his deck to go get here. Which is a very nice setup.
I told you he loves those basics.
Yep.
Now, he could go with explosives for one and kill your Deathrite Shaman, but I just want to moon him.
Yeah.
There we go. Here it is.
There it is.
Yep. Blood Moon choke battle. You have a lot of mountains, and my islands don't work. Thanks a lot.
They don't make them like they used to.
They sure don't. They sure don't. Search of Righteousness is such an unfair hate card.
A self-inflicted wound killed my thing, and I took 2. Some of you have no idea.
Your turn. I can't play a spell.
Yep.
Scalding Tar in the draw, which cannot go get an island because of Blood Moon.
But I don't think Bernal even wants to go get an island.
Oh, we could just be on the Hardcast Batterskull strategy.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
We get rid of this Deathrite Shaman. Untap, cast the Batterskull. Your opponent with no castable cards probably going to struggle to beat a Batterskull.
Yep. Scott wanted to activate Deathrite Shaman's Drain ability, but Blood Moon says no, sir. There is a Windswept Heath Mountain. Joe Bernal able to tap his Scalding Tarn for red mana because of Blood Moon. Oh, look, another Windswept Heath Mountain. True name,
Nope.
True name nemesis to draw. Nice. Embarrassing for both players. A basic Plains.
Oh, it's heating up.
A basic island. And a Batterskull. Germ token incoming. Alex Bistecki in the house.
Nice.
A Bayou Mountain. And now our Season 3 Invitational champion might be running away with things here. A little help from Joe Bernal pushing him forward. Green Sun Zenith.
Sweet.
Yep. Castable. Relic of Progenitus. What appeal. Unbelievable. In for 4 more comes Bernal.
No graveyard, your lands don't work.
Yep. Looking for maybe a flawless victory.
Yeah. All we need is a mind twist and we got it perfect.
Glittering Wish the draw. Pass the turn back. Relic will be activated. Graveyards are gone. They're in exile. Bernal will draw. Flooded Strand the draw. In for 4 more. Batterskull being an artifact that is colorless, mattering quite a bit here. One of the few castable cards in Joe's deck. Tyler with a Wasteland Mountain. And that is going to do it. Joe Bernal's going to win this match here over Tyler Scott. 2-0. Blue-White Stoneblade will take care of Abzan. Welcome back to Legacy, folks.
A lot of setup and a lot of jockeying, concluding with someone not being able to cast any of the cards in their hand. A perfect way to start off our day of Legacy coverage. Could not be happier.
A true thing of beauty. Now we just need to get the Teamer Delver decks in here, some Wastelands firing off, and you're going to be happy.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little disappointing for me to see no Wastelands activated in that match. You know, Scott's got a couple in his deck, and